Hi, this is Elijah Manor, and welcome to Mannerisms. In this video, we'll look at a React app with legacy unsafe lifecycle hooks and migrate them to use safer alternatives. So let's get started. On the left, we have a React app bootstrapped by Create React App. We'll go ahead and start our app with npm start, and it'll kick up a web server and launch our browser to the web app. Our app on the right leverages the 3 legacy lifecycle hooks in React in order to wire up the chat timer, add an event listener to clear the messages, maintain scroll position to see the latest messages if you're already at the bottom, and to reset the state if new props are passed. So let's stop our messaging app, cancel our server, and kick up our code editor to check things out. However, before we dive into our code, let's take a step back and review where things are at. With the launch of React 16.3, several new aliased methods were introduced to help the gradual migration away from a few unsafe methods. Component will mount, component will receive props, and component will update. In a future 16.x release of React, these methods will get deprecated and eventually removed altogether in React 17.0. Until then, you could prefix these methods with unsafe underscore, or you could migrate your code to use alternative methods, which we'll be looking at in this video. Note, in a previous video, I covered a handy code mod that you could run to automatically prepend unsafe underscore to legacy lifecycle hooks. So let's switch back to our code editor and open up the chat React component. First, let's look at the legacy methods that I've already prepended. So I'll search for unsafe underscore, and we'll find the component will mount method, the component will receive props method, and the component will update method. Starting with the component will mount method, here we're setting up our timer interval to generate messages, and we wire up a keydown event listener. And in this case, we could replace the unsafe version with component did mount instead, and it'll work just as it did before. Our next unsafe method is component will receive props. This is used to check props passed in and override any state that might be present. This migration isn't as straightforward as the previous one. Here we'll use a new static lifecycle hook called getDerivedStateFromProps. It takes next props and prev state as its parameters. Since our method is static, there is no longer an implicit this parameter, so we'll replace this.state with prev state. And instead of calling this.setState, we'll return whatever we want React to update. Also, remember to return null if you don't want to indicate a change. Next, we'll focus on component will update. This method is trying to determine if our app should auto-scroll the messages based on the current scroll position. Here, it stores the result in a should auto-scroll instance property. For this migration, we'll use another new lifecycle hook called getSnapshot before update. Instead of getting next props and next state, the properties passed are prev props and prev state. However, in our case, our code isn't using those values. Here, instead of saving off our boolean to an instance property, we'll return the value. That'll get passed along to the component did update lifecycle hook. Which brings us to the component did update method. This is not one of the unsafe methods. It just has a new third parameter that represents the value returned from getSnapshot before update. In our case, we'll destructure the should autoscroll property from the third snapshot parameter and use it instead of the instance property. Now, once we save our code, we could switch to our terminal and restart our server, and then we can start to kick the tires on our app a little bit, and we should see that the app works just as it did before. But now we no longer have any unsafe legacy methods. As always, thanks for watching. We looked at an example of how to migrate unsafe lifecycle methods to use safer alternatives. I've provided some resource links from this video in the YouTube description. If you want to know more about future videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, feel free to reach out on Twitter at Elijah Manor. Until then, have a blessed day.